All right. All right. Hello, everyone. I hope all is well. We want to thank you for joining us for our Global Perspectives in Veterinary Medicine online series. This series aims to provide a better understanding of veterinary medicine's impact throughout the world and give you a comprehensive view of the various career paths available to veterinary professionals by way of virtual trip around the world. Overall, these sessions are designed to give you some information to place your career in a larger global framework. And so today we talk with Dr. Samantha Dorman. Dr. Dorman is the veterinary officer within the Cayman Islands Department of Agriculture, and she is a close partner of PVM. Dr. Dorman graduated with her veterinary science degree from Massey University in New Zealand. She has served as a veterinary officer in the Department of Agriculture in multiple capacities since 2015. She's a member of multiple boards and working groups such as the Cayman Islands Veterinary Board, the American Public Health Association, and the Caribbean Veterinary Medical Association. She's a great friend to the Purdue University College of Veterinary Medicine, and she's played an integral role in providing opportunities for our students to gain experience in public health and in research. We are so thankful that she is available today for a conversation on her journey and approach to veterinary medicine. Usually we give you a big hand clap, but since we don't have that, we're gonna do this one. All right.
I love it. Improvising.
Thank you so much. All right, so let's get right into it. Can you tell us about your journey to be involved in this area of veterinary medicine and why you chose this specific career path?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited that this has worked out and that we've been able to use Zoom to get this done. So I started out, I always knew that I wanted to go into large animal or agricultural type medicine, so livestock and horses. So I started out doing just like ambulatory care, calving cows, treating colics, sewing up wounds, that sort of thing. I started out doing that, and that was the first about 2.5 years of my career. So from 2013 until about 2015. And then I got asked to go on a training workshop about antimicrobial resistance. So I don't know if you recall, but the WHO had asked every country in the world basically to do like an action plan for antimicrobial resistance, how we were going to tackle it, the stakeholders that we were going to involve on a national level. And I got asked to go. Didn't really know a ton about antimicrobial resistance, if I'm completely honest. It sounded vaguely familiar from vet school, but I thought, okay, it's a work trip. It sounds interesting. I'll go. So that was 2016, and that is when my life and my career was turned upside down. I discovered this amazing area of health and medicine, public health, One Health, and ever since I have just immersed myself in it. I'm doing a master's in One Health. All my work initiatives have really changed with a public health focus. We've been doing a lot of disease surveillance projects, which your students have so graciously helped us with. And so now I eat, breathe, and live public health. So I always say that public health chose me. I did not choose public health.
That's awesome.
And what is ironic is that my dad spent 50 years in public health. Wow. From the environmental health standpoint. And I wanted nothing to do with it because who wants to do what their dad did? And now here we are, full circle. So it's ironic.
What drew you in? So, I mean, after you went to this training, what was something that really drew you in to want to get involved in this work on a deeper level?
I mean, it just all made sense, like how everything is just connected, human health, animal health, the health of the environment, water health, just the interconnectivity of it all. The fact that our decisions don't only impact us as human beings, but have longer lasting and further reaching impacts throughout different species and different areas of the world. And yeah, it made sense. And it was something that I could see impacting everyday life, so it's something that you can teach to children, to the elderly. Once you start connecting those dots and showing them how, everything is related, it just, yeah, it made sense to me. And I thought this is something I could really devote the rest of my career to, you know?
That's awesome. That's awesome. So along with those lines, then, can you describe your approach and philosophy to veterinary medicine, especially with this other perspective included as well?
So yeah, I would say like from a clinical standpoint, my approach was always to be just very thorough, ask a lot of questions, never assume that you know what you're doing. As horrible as that sounds, like you have to stay humble, especially when it comes to working with live beings, right? You can't, you know, think you know it all and go in and rush. Like you have to take your time and just process things bit by bit. So I had a very conversational approach to clinical practice. You know, I really focused on speaking to the owners. A lot of my friends and colleagues and people I know would say, oh, I want to be a vet because I don't like people. And I would always think, but animals don't talk. So how are you going to do your job? So I really tried to build a relationship with my clients first and foremost. And I found that I had the best results when I was able to take the time to really ask the right questions, pick up on the emotions and the body language of the clients, and try to see what might be going on with their animal. Sometimes it's not about what people say, but it's about their body language. So I try to really pick up on that. And then I would say, once I moved into the public health side of things, just awareness and education, those are like everything for me. Research, you know, collaborating, networking, always finding out more, always digging deeper. And so I would say if you can have the mindset that you're still a student, like throughout your entire career, I think you'll go really far. You got to stay humble. When you start to think that you know it all, or that, you know, you're an expert in an area, I think that's where the wheels can start to fall off. So yeah, asking the right questions, being conversational, doing your research, and networking. Those are some of the key elements to my approach to my career, really.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. So the Department of Agriculture there in the Cayman Islands, they do a ton to engage and serve the community. Can you talk about that a little bit, about what you all have been doing, some of your favorite projects that you've been working on recently?
Yes. So some of the main kind of community outreach are career days. We have them for primary school students, middle school students, high school students. And we try to pick a theme each year, whether it's technology or sustainability in agriculture. And yeah, we go in, we got the plant side and the animal side. So we go in together as two teams, and we kind of highlight different aspects of our jobs and our careers. And the kids walk through with their little booklets with questions, and we try to make it fun. And even for the young ones who don't really quite get what's going on and they're just there for the giveaways and the candy and to tick their books off, I think just getting in their ear, just, you know, them seeing the different careers that might exist. If they take away one word or one theme, or, you know, they have a pencil that has a little message on it about One Health, it's a start, you know, and kids teach parents, kids teach adults. So you're planting that seed, right? So we really try to focus on school-aged kids when we're trying to deliver any kind of important message. And then another one on the other end of the spectrum is farmer seminars. We try to have at least four of them a year, so kind of quarterly. And whether it be cattle or goats or something for plants and livestock farmers, we try to go through different themes each year, whether it's welfare or sustainability, food security. And I love speaking at those. I find that the setting is quite intimate. And so you get a lot of questions that you wouldn't normally get when you have a group of different farmers having different experiences. There's good dialogue going. You can give out good tips and handouts. We try to bring in guest speakers too, so it's not just us that they're hearing every time, to make it a little bit more interesting. So those are vital. We try to do those annually. And then our disease surveillance projects with students. That's probably what I'm most passionate about. I love the entire process from, meeting the students via email, writing up the proposal for the project, getting the funding sorted out, and then picking them up at the airport, executing it. It's been one of the highlights of my job, to be really honest. I'm not just saying that because we're doing a Purdue interview. It wasn't that long ago that I was a student too, and so I just feel like that mentorship and the opportunity is just so crucial and has a long-lasting impact for your entire career. I remember my clinical year quite fondly, and a lot of the cases that stuck with me were the ones that I saw firsthand, and the vets who actually treated me like a human being and not like a little minion or go make my coffee type intern. They treated me as a person, and so I just try to do the same. So yeah, that's a little bit about some of the projects that are near and dear to me.
That's beautiful. All right, so taking a shift now, can you describe to us the things that are most challenging for you in your career?
So yeah, it's definitely not all rainbows and roses. There are challenges. I would say buy-in is a big one, whether it be farmers or whichever stakeholders you're working with. Your supervisor, if you have a great idea, you think it's great, but it might not necessarily be a shared vision. So you got to be able to take that on your cheek, regroup, maybe dialogue a little bit and see what might be a better idea, a better method of execution. So try not to get disheartened when you get those roadblocks. And then working in a government institution, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of bureaucracy, there's a lot of people who have to sign off on proposals and projects. That can take time, that can tie you up. So you might get your part of it done and meet your deadline, but it might be stagnated for 2 more months because you have 3 other people who need to sign off. They might be on vacation or they might have something else pressing. And so you're excited and ready to go, but you hit these roadblocks. So just being able to prepare yourself mentally that will happen, not might, it will. And just not being discouraged by it. Funding, budget, I think that's pretty standard as well. Always trying to do more with less. Especially in a government setting, as a public servant, that's something that we get told a lot. You got to learn to do more with less. So trying to tailor your initiatives in a way that you can get a great outcome, but not necessarily spend lots of money.
Yeah.
And I think those are the main ones. Personally, also another one would probably be juggling family life with your career. I think anyone, especially women, will say that. I mean, we just had our first baby. She's 6 weeks old. And I literally nursed her for 15 minutes before this interview, gave her to her dad, buttoned up my clothes, and pressed the Zoom link. So, I mean, it can be touch and go sometimes. So you really got to make sure that you're prioritizing work and home. They're both important. They both have, some balls are plastic and you can let slide, and some balls are glass and you can't let them drop. So you got to be able to differentiate between what's a plastic ball, what's a glass ball, what can I drop in the home, what can I drop with work. And it's a constant conversation with your parents or whoever it is. But yeah, just keep having that dialogue about what you've got going on and how you can prioritize both things. You can't do everything well, but you can try.
I like that. That's awesome. In terms of, I guess, the impact of COVID, how has that impacted you and your work, and even how the country engages moving forward? How do you think that's going to affect the country's engagement moving forward?
So it's been a weird year. Yeah. I got sent home on March the 13th from work as a pregnant asthmatic who has a 92-year-old father at home. And yeah, I won't be going back until March the 1st. So it's going to be like a whole year at home. remote working was something that was not popular in the government system. Let me put it that way. It was something that sounded like a beautiful idea, but never really worked. And then suddenly we had our IT staff trying to get everyone connected to do remote working. The first few weeks were disastrous. I couldn't log on. I didn't even have like the tools that I needed to log on. And then when I had them, they didn't work. Constantly having to troubleshoot with IT. There was definitely a fragmentation within the department as well. You know, that communication didn't really happen as well, just because we're so used to all being in the office together and being able to walk to each other's cubicle or pick up the phone and call an extension. And then, you know, you're still trying to do emergency work. You know, there's still animals that need to be responded to and staff who might need to stay home and sort out their kids and whatnot. So it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of learning as we went. It's probably only been about a month, I would say, since we feel like we kind of have some momentum going again, you know, and we're able to communicate with each other at a decent level. And it's been a challenge, and I definitely feel like this is going to be a monumental mark in my career and just in our history, you know, like for the department, for the world. In Cayman, we talk about things pre-Hurricane Ivan and post-Hurricane Ivan, which was in 2004. And now it's pre-COVID and post-COVID, you know, that's the significance of it. And so I think it's taught us that we just need to be flexible and adaptable. I know those words get thrown out a lot in the professional world, but this has definitely been like a pilot project for how to be flexible and adaptable. I had to lower my standards quite a bit for the kind of work that I normally execute. And, you know, being punctual and meeting deadlines and being able to group well with my team and check in with everyone. It just wasn't possible for one reason or the other to maintain that high standard that I had. So yeah, I think the important thing is to just wake up each day and keep going, you know?
Yeah, no, that's real. That's real. You mentioned something earlier about interconnectivity, right? And you tied that into the pursuit for the One Health Masters and this passion for public health. You know, being on an island, I'm pretty sure you can see the connection a lot easier than some people from these much larger territories. So can you talk a little bit about that connection in terms of One Health and what you've been seeing in your experience?
So a prime example would be food security, or in our case, food insecurity. So we import 99.9% of everything that we consume on this island. And so when you have something like either a natural disaster like a hurricane or a global pandemic or any kind of rioting or anything that can affect trade and borders being open and you know, being able to access ports for ships and all that, weather, you're gonna have problems. So we had people panic buying. People were literally afraid that we weren't gonna be able to get food and toilet paper and paper towel and rice and flour from the US. And that's where we import most of our goods from. And so, yeah, there was a real fear. There was a lot of panic buying. There was a lot of long queues. But on the other end of the spectrum, we saw a lot more people buying local. So our local farmers were getting more supported, and they also had the opportunity to be innovative. They started doing more delivery of produce. So, I mean, you had one end of the spectrum where everyone was afraid and, you know, really anxious. And then you had the other end of the spectrum where people were actually finding ways to be innovative. And so I just think that shows that, you know, out of every situation, there's opportunities. And that's something that stuck with me a lot, just seeing what could have been for our island, you know, had things been a lot worse. And there were still some products that you couldn't get or some brands that you couldn't get. And so our supermarket owners had to start looking to other jurisdictions for importing goods. So I remember seeing ads, some brands you might not be familiar with, but it's because they're coming from Latin America as opposed to the US or whatnot. This is what we had access to. And so that's what we had to do. So lots of lessons have been learned, just not just for our profession, but just as human beings.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. So our final question for this interview. The purpose of this entire series is to provide students a global perspective. Even if they're not able to travel, we're still providing them a global perspective in different careers that are open for veterinary professionals. And so, can you describe to us why having a global perspective is important for veterinary medicine professionals?
I think that word interconnectivity is where it all lands for me. I think when you're in public health, you see even more so how we're not just connected across species, but across borders as well. Look at the global pandemic. It started in one region of the world, and because of travel and trade, it's reached pretty much every corner of the globe. And that's something that we learn about in textbooks, but to actually see a case study unfold with a global pandemic, I don't know that anyone would have asked for that as an example, but that's what we got. And so I think when we're thinking about veterinary medicine, whether it be clinical or from a public health standpoint, you just never know how far-reaching impacts are going to be. And in 2020, they have the ability to be very far-reaching. And so you can't just think, oh, well, I'm going to give this drug and it's only going to impact this animal. You got to think about water quality, water table, soil health. How is this drug going to be excreted once it's metabolized in the animal, And then also in terms of travel and trade, like we can get to the other side of the world in a day now. So if you're not feeling well today and you go to New Zealand tomorrow, you don't know what you might be taking to New Zealand, and vice versa. So I think just realizing that it's not just about a single instance or a single trip or a single administration of a drug, like just thinking about the far-reaching impacts. And also thinking about where you might end up one day in your career. I remember one of our lecturers saying that, your first job might not be your dream job. And just hearing stories about how they had come to vet school wanting to be a cat vet or whatever, and then they ended up, specializing in equine surgery or public health or whatnot, just being open-minded. And with that comes opportunities for working overseas, or just networking with people in different jurisdictions. One of our radiographer, or radiologist rather, she was in New Zealand lecturing, and then at night she would read films back in LA. Because of the time difference, she was able to make extra money on the side, looking at ultrasounds and radiographs and consulting with veterinarians on that side of the world. And so, we have that ability with technology these days, right? So just not limiting yourself.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. We want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk with you. Any final words for these students that a lot might be interested in pursuing a field just like yours?
Yeah, man, I would say go for it. It's very rewarding. It's very broad, so there's never opportunity for boredom. Probably my biggest piece of advice would be mentorship. Having a mentor, whether it's 1 or 5, however many you feel like you need or that you have access to, I feel like it really can make the trajectory of your career, make or break rather. So if you find an area of veterinary medicine that you're passionate about early on, or you think you might be and you're curious, find someone to mentor you. Find someone that you think is approachable and interested, that might have the time, whether it be via email or someone that you can actually spend time with in person and travel around with and shadow or work on projects with. But I think it's an absolute necessity for any young vet, whether it's a student or just starting out, to find a mentor. I know that it's made a huge impact in my career. Its presence and its absence has made a huge impact in my career. And so I would say, start looking from now, man.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And as mentioned, students, we have Dr. Dorman. Once borders are reopened, hopefully we can start pursuing opportunities for you all to gain some experience and mentorship there with the Department of Agriculture with Dr. Dorman there. I mean, they have been excellent. They have taken many of our students, and our students have had rewarding experiences. So we want to thank you once again for joining us. In the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of having a newborn, you came and joined us. And so thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to meeting some more Purdue students. Absolute joy to work with you guys.
That's awesome.